Welcome into the Orange Crush podcast. Another heartbreaking loss for the Denver Broncos as they go down, now allowing the Chargers to go 3-0 for the first time since 2002. Rachel Vigil, Cody, Roark, hanging with you. We're digesting everything you need to know. A little therapy session, if we can say so myself.
I always like therapy sessions too. I'm a big believer in the 24-hour rule, right? You have 24 hours to stew on it, or you have 24 hours to celebrate, and then you have to flush it and move on. And there's still some things that, you're digesting here when it comes to this Broncos loss on Sunday. Disappointing, gut punch, gut wrenching, you name it. That's exactly what it was. This was a frustrating week 3 performance here by the Broncos. And certainly I think the vibe with the team after the fact, because, we did the post Monday Zoom conference calls, and it just seemed like there was a lot more introspection by players. Jonah Ellis, Quinn Miners, Sean Payton. Just a rough game here, and now we have a whole entire week to digest it before Monday Night Football.
My two biggest takeaways. Sean Payton is not worried about the long balls with Bo Nix like the rest of the world is. Not concerned at all about it, and I want to get your opinion because obviously you dove into those plays on your film review. And then the second one that I feel like came across for everybody, the penalties. The penalties, especially when it came to Quinn Miners. I felt like that just kept getting brought up over and over again, the penalties.
Yeah, 10 penalties in Sunday's game for 90 yards. And you go back to the week before, I think they had 7 or 8. And then I think week 1, they had 6 or 7. And they've been impactful penalties too. And look, there's certain things I think you can question. I personally thought the Adam Troutman offsides call, I felt like it was a bogus call, and it negated an RJ Harvey like 12 or 13-yard catch and run for a first down. So you have that negative play. It backs you up. And then all of a sudden you have a face mask on Garrett Bowles. It backs you up an additional 15. It's just anything that could go wrong. It's like the timing of these penalties too, Rachel, are killer. Like, you talk about not making mistakes. Like, we understand in the game of football, it's played at 1,000,000 miles an hour. There's going to be mistakes. But when you talk about like needing to avoid a mistake, these penalties for 2 weeks in a row, you go to the Colts game, 2 back-to-back penalties on the offense in the fourth quarter, drove them back. And then 2 back-to-back penalties here in this game against the Chargers drove them back and killed the drive. Just it stinks. It's brutal. And it's something that I feel like the coaches, with how often the players were talking about it in the Zoom calls, it seems like that's a huge emphasis for them. And that has been, honestly, I think even since the preseason.
No, I'm totally with you. Yeah, that was just my main takeaway. I was like, oh, they clearly were pissed. And then everybody's getting on Talanoa Hufanga, about the one where he obviously threw down. Was it Johnston?
No, it was Keenan Allen.
Oh, right. Yeah. And everybody's all up in arms. And it was funny because we actually talked to Chris Harris Jr. yesterday on our post-game show over on Altitude TV. And he was saying, like, we used to do that kind of stuff all the time. And he's like, but you have to play really smart. You have to do it in the first quarter. You set the tone. You don't do it in the fourth quarter if it's a close game and all of a sudden you're getting a flag. And it's just like they do this all the time, right? But it's such a mind game, too, of when you have to be smart about doing these hard hits or shoving somebody onto the ground.
Yeah, and I would even say, too, I know Hufanga is not a dirty player. He would never, that's not the type of guy that he is. I think you saw some people on Twitter try to characterize him as that. No, like he's just an ultra competitive dude, flies around. He and Keenan Allen, they talked about it after the game or even during the game as it was going on. They had a good battle between those two guys. But remember the first quarter, the very first defensive drive, what had happened was the Broncos, remember Quentin Johnston caught a pass and the Broncos kind of held him up a little bit and they thought that they were stopping forward progress. And then he runs for 37-something yards. So I'm thinking it was more of the lines of that situation there where Hufanga's like, all right, we're going to stop forward progress here. I'm going to try to bring him down. And it just ended up being a suplex, which the NFL, of course, they are going to flag that. But I felt like that's maybe the reason why he did it.
No, I actually didn't even put the 2 and 2 together, but you're totally right. When you're watching that play, you're thinking, oh my gosh, Pat Surtain easily could have just wrapped him up, like all of those guys, right? But you're not trying to be a dirty player. You're not trying to throw guys onto the ground. But it does open up the question of the Super Bowl 50 defense. There were a lot of dogs on that team, Cody. Like we can probably all agree there were a lot of dogs. They got along really well. I personally wouldn't want to go up against any of them. But I feel like the NFL has kind of almost switched in a way, and I feel like the Broncos are actually lacking quote unquote dogs. And I'm not trying to say that in a disrespectful term or anything of that nature, but you just all like, I feel like Bronco fans know exactly what I'm talking about. There was something with that Super Bowl defense where it felt like every single week, whoever was going up against them feared them in a way that's different than how teams look at this Broncos defense now.
Yeah, I think the game has changed quite a bit. And the way that Super Bowl 50 defense played, I mean, if they would have played in today's game, if you take that same group and you apply how they played in today's game, you're going to see ejections. You're going to see fines every single week. I mean, the game has just, it's crazy, Rachel, how in 10 years it has become so different, right? Used to be able to hit guys hard, and now all of a sudden you hit a guy too hard, it's a $45,000 fine. You look at Saquon Barkley lowering his shoulder, and when he goes to lower shoulder, he initiates, helmet contact with the Chiefs defender in week 2. He gets fined $46,000 for it. This is a crazy game that we are now witnessing in the NFL, and I think it's tough to play that style of defense. To your point, I think the Broncos have tons of dogs defensively, like mentality, but you can't play that way in today's game without being punished for it. And that's so tough. And even just once again, I'll never blame officials, but I would say that from an officiating standpoint, there were a lot of inconsistencies. Yes, there were some blatant penalties that Denver committed in that game. There were also a lot of missed penalties. I feel like they didn't call in the Chargers offense, holding, false start. Early on, they had some guys moving before snap. I felt like they got away with some things that certainly, Denver, it was called a little differently. But that's not the reason the Broncos ultimately lost this game.
Nope. And it's not the reason the defense, unfortunately, gave up a last-second field goal or anything of that nature. Unfortunately, it really came down to the offense just not able to do anything. When you were breaking down the film, when the Broncos were having success as an offense, what did you notice and what went away at the end of the fourth quarter, besides the penalties, that you can say, okay, this is where things really were struggling for this team?
Oh, well, I mean, Rachel, to be honest with you, nothing really went right for them outside of how they opened up. Like the 4th and 2 dial up fake toss, bomb to Cortland Sutton for a touchdown was such a beautifully designed play. Yep. That was about the best play that they had all day. J.K. Dobbins' run to open up the second half, I think, was a huge positive for them. That was just kind of an anomaly there because really the run game before that, the Broncos, I think, had -4 yards altogether on that, carry before then. So Dobbins got them going there. That was the J.K. Dobbins drive there. Love to see that. But they struggled on first down in this game. They struggled on second down, and they struggled on third down. The numbers, they make me want to puke a little bit, and I'm sure they're making the players and the coaching staff puke because they were 2 of 13 on third down, but 10 of those 13 third downs were 3rd and 10 plus. Like, that is a ridiculous field situation to have to work with. 3rd and 19 on the flea flicker that Bo missed on Marvin. 3rd and 10 on the pass to Cortland Sutton that, just barely outstretched over his hands that they couldn't miss. And it goes back to, the deep balls that you were talking about earlier. Sean said he's not concerned about those. He says, you want to be careful not to overcoach on something where the ball is just hitting the fingertips of a receiver. You don't want to overcoach that. But I do think Bo's mechanics a little bit. There are times where he just kind of runs and throws himself forward and launches the football. So you get off base sometimes. The ball traveled, but for the most part, it's not all on Bo. But Bo obviously has struggled. He's in a little bit of a slump here. But the offense, I would say, all around was brutal. It was brutal, and Sean Payton said it was inconsistent across the board.
I feel like we can all agree when we were watching that play that the second the ball left Bo's fingers and we all watched him like hop to the side and get ready to toss it down there, that we were like, if Marvin makes this, is an unbelievable catch. But it wasn't an unbelievable throw besides the fact that it showed Bo had arm strength. Yeah.
Which, for someone that, for a guy who people call a check down merchant, Bo's got pretty good arm strength. I will say that. I mean, Rachel, I think Broncos fans here can be concerned and frustrated with Bo's play. Bo, in 2 out of the 3 weeks we've seen him play, hasn't played good enough. I think that's fair to say here. I feel like the slump is kind of here, but I also think it's something that isn't going to linger around. Like I look at how Bo played in yesterday's game. I look at how the offense played as a whole. It kind of paints a little bit of a bigger picture for you. Bo has blame in this. Sean has blame in this. The O-line has blame in this, and the personnel around also has blame. Like there's dirty hands on the entire operation, as we'll say here. And there's this urgency for Bo to kind of get things going here, to just find his confidence. That's the biggest thing I think that they need to do, Rachel. It's clear as day. It looks like right now Bo doesn't have a lot of confidence. He's frustrated with how things are going. Yeah. He's ultra competitive. And so I think he's going to stew and manifest on that a little bit. But the coaches and everyone around Bo and the offense, they all have to do a better job of being more efficient on the earlier downs. That's really why they struggled a lot in this game against the Chargers. Not to mention, it's a damn good Chargers defense.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, very, very good Chargers defense. And yet it felt like the Broncos defense did even better, right? So we're sitting there thinking how bad this game could have been. The score for this game if the Broncos defense hadn't shown up. If they would have played like they did against the Colts, I can't even imagine what the final score would have been of this game. At halftime, we all would have been like, oh my gosh, it's completely over. Instead, your defense gives you a chance. My only big concern, though, flipping back over to Bo, is just the fact that he is like over competitive a little bit. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but when you are over competitive or you start to notice little things, right, you really start to change those things. And how much of Bo's game do we actually want to see him change? Because last year we watched him have success once he got confident, once he kind of had that poise. I don't want him to overcorrect all of a sudden, and then things are really disastrous for the QB.
That's well said. And I agree with you. Look, we all know in the offseason he went and changed. He worked on some mechanical stuff. But part of me is wondering, like, did that work in the offseason? Did some of the change in some of his mechanics, did that impact other areas of his game? I feel like it's a valid question to kind of bring to the forefront here as we continue to go about, analyzing where Bo's at through 3 weeks of the season. But I agree with you, Rachel. I mean, we're seeing him a little bit more sporadic with his footwork a little bit. Once again, like, there's times where pressure is bowing around him and, he's climbing the pocket. He's doing what you want in terms of climbing the pocket, but then he's taking it a step further, which I think is negatively impacting him. He's climbing the pocket and then he's not fully setting his feet. He's climbing and then he's launching himself forward while throwing at times. And so when you get that off-base platform, it can lead to, sporadic throws or, overthrows here at this point. I think that Bo is thinking too much here. Yeah. And I don't know what it is, Rachel. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know what the answer is here for Sean Payton. But there's obviously some numbers and there's some trends right now through 3 weeks that are certainly puzzling here that the offense simply can't continue to commit going forward. I feel like there's got to be more distribution offensively, but these are all things we can continue to talk about. We got a lot to break down here on today's Orange Crush podcast.
I know, we seriously do, because one thing I want to get into is, I don't know if you saw all of the pregame tweets, but everyone was like, Pat Bryant's getting in, working with the ones right now, warming up. Like, are we going to see a big Pat Bryant game? We saw nothing from Pat Bryant. We saw no targets, nothing. Why is that? What are we doing with the offense right here?
That is a great question, a great tease from Rachel. We'll answer that here next on the Orange Crush podcast.
Yo, I can guard pro in these.
I can guard you and route you up.
You sure about that?
You fellas looking for a quarterback?
The goal!
You're right, Billy.
These do bring out my eyes.
Every shoe for every athlete. Dix is the GOAT.
Where the heck was Pat Bryant in the offense on Sunday against the Chargers? That's my question for you, Cody. How many times did you see him actually out on the field?
I mean, I think he was on the field for, 12 or 13 snaps in this game, but you would have never known because Pat didn't really get the ball. He didn't get targeted much. I mean, and I would say that's a bigger picture issue here, not just for Pat, but I think for everybody else. Didn't see a single target in this game, as a matter of fact, but he did block. Like on that J.K. Dobbins run that he had to get to the outside, Pat, he blocked. And you know what I say? If you block, you should get the rock. I don't know why the rookie didn't get a target in this game, but got to find a way to get the rookie involved. But Rachel, kind of to that point, I'm curious for your thoughts here. I look at the Chargers. Let me just look at this real quick and kind of bring it into perspective for people listening. They had 5 different receivers with at least 4 catches and at least 40 yards altogether in this game. The distribution for Justin Herbert and that Chargers offense, it was there. They had multiple guys that Justin went to here, whereas the Broncos, Cortland Sutton was the leading guy this week, where he had 6 catches, $118, and a touchdown on 8 targets. But the next most targets that anybody had for the Broncos in the pass catching game, RJ Harvey, he had 3 catches for 14 yards. Lucas Kroll had 2 catches for 1 yard. Troy Franklin had 4 targets, 2 catches. Marvin Mims had 4 targets, 1 catch. The distribution is more leaning. It's heavy on one side with one player, and that's been the trend for 2 weeks in a row. Troy Franklin against the Colts, Cortland Sutton against the Chargers here. You need more of these guys coming in. And Rachel, my thought is, I think personnel rotations, it's something that Sean loves to do, but I do think this is impacting maybe the production of the offense and the volume distribution here.
I totally understand the game of like playing to what the defense gives you. I understand that, okay? But I also know really good teams stick to their identity and they don't try and play to the like opposing team, right? You're good enough no matter what because of your offense, how you're able to handle it, your defense, you have trust. Like, I get that, but I have no freaking clue what this Broncos identity is, right? Every single week we're starting off different. It's a different look every single time. I was wondering, I'm like, what are we doing on the first drive of this game for the Broncos offense? I was like, this is what we drew up, Sean Payton. I was about to throw my computer at my TV being like, this was it? I just don't. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying to play the Sean Payton mind game that we talk about every single time we're here. And I just fully do not understand. And it's the exact same thing. Again, it's like we haven't seen RJ Harvey at all for the past 2 weeks, really. Everybody being like, give him more touches. And then all of a sudden, he's one of your top guys this week. And not even for running back, like not even for rushing yards, for the fact that he's in the passing game. Like, make it make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, 2 carries for your rookie, I don't think is good enough. I mean, granted, JK had 11. You know, he almost he was about, 19 yards away from breaking over 100 yards. Would have snapped what is, I think we're close to 40 games in a row now where the Broncos haven't had a 100-yard rusher. That is ridiculous to me. It's criminal. You're right, though. This team doesn't have an identity on offense. You know, I put out the tweet, the identity is offensive, for the offense, because the simple things, Rachel, they're not doing the simple things the right way, right? But they're doing a lot of things. And if, what do they say? You're the, master of, like, jack of all trades, but master of none or something like that. Like, you got all these things that you're doing, but you can't master the simple stuff. Yep. To me, it's a little weird. 2 carries, 2 yards for RJ. His 2 carries that he had, he's facing a 6-man box. You mentioned this, though, about the personnels and the subs in this game. It didn't matter, Rachel, if the Broncos came out in 11 personnel, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers, or if they came out in 12 personnel, which is 1 running back, 2 tight ends. What they did is the Chargers didn't change how they played. They went to the nickel when they got into goal line situations here, but they stayed in the dime personnel, 6 defensive backs, a majority of the game. And on third downs, they used their inside linebacker, number 0, Diane Henley, to kind of play a QB spy against Bo Nix, because not only you have him who's athletic and go sideline to sideline, well, you also have Derwin James, who can float and play around everywhere. They use those 2 guys to really just say, hey, we don't care what personnel you bring in. We're staying in dime, and we're going to dare you to beat us. And they kept everything in front of them. They had a really good defensive game plan. They're well coached there. That, to me, is the frustrating thing, is just that Denver had no counterpunch, and certainly they were making it easy for the Chargers to kind of just do whatever they wanted.
Do you know where else I'd sit, too, about the fact that Evan Ingram and Dre Greenlaw obviously both hurt? Although Dre did travel. He was on the sidelines. Evan was at home watching the game. But I don't feel like this team gets any better if either one of those 2 guys return. Do you feel the same way?
I mean, you can look at maybe like, okay, what can they add? I think the Broncos took risks, right? They gambled on both of these guys. Now with Dre being out the next 4 weeks guaranteed, we understand that. Evan, I mean, the issue even when Evan was on the field was like, how come Sean's not utilizing him as the Joker? The way that he said that he wanted to. If they're making these mistakes on offense, I don't think Evan's addition there is going to make much of a difference, because they're having fundamental issues impacting them on the O-line, a wide receiver, a quarterback, the run game, the play call operation. Like, the offense is very just uncoordinated right now. And defensively, I mean, we don't know what Dre Greenlaw we would get essentially here in Denver. But I do feel like he would be an upgrade, maybe in some of the passing stuff. But the question is, who would he upend? I mean, Rachel, I think it's safe to say from a coverage standpoint, I think Drake Greenlaw would probably take over as the green dot guy for Alex Singleton. Would Alex be on the field? Would he still be the starter if Dre returns? I don't know right now if that's the case. But there's so much ambiguity here at inside linebacker. I think Dre would definitely would make a difference though, compared to maybe like what we've seen from Evan, just because Evan is just going to be part of the cog right now with the offense, where they have too many issues that are unrelated just to, who they have in there. It's execution that they're struggling with.
You mean having to call a timeout on your first drive? That's not part of the game plan every single week.
Brutal. And the thing that bums me out, we probably didn't talk about this enough. I don't think anybody's really talked about it. The defense, did a pretty good job early on in this game for a large portion. I say through three quarters, the defense did a pretty damn good job.
Yep.
Special teams, Marvin Mims has two really great returns that give the Broncos offense great field position, and the offense can't reward him for that. That, to me, I found that to be a little frustrating as well.
And I asked Chris Harris Jr. this yesterday, too, after the game, of how, if you are on the defensive front, you're doing your job, do you not get frustrated with the offense? And, he kind of gave me like a little spiel as that's with, it's a team, like we all kind of have to play together. But I can't imagine being the defense or being Marvin Mims and, dealing with that, because it was so maddening to watch. I wanted to rip my hair out sometimes when the team came back on, or the offense came back on the field. And I just can't even imagine if you're on the sidelines and you're like, I'm going out there. And we're honestly very lucky. The defense didn't get exhausted with how much time they were actually out there, because it was just maddening to watch. And I thought that Bo wasn't going to look super good. I thought that the offense wasn't going to look great in training camp. I said that. I had preached it. This is like next level of kind of where I thought this offense was going to be and how bad. And bad's such a terrible word to use. Like, they're not one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Well, they kind of are if you look at some of the stats, but it's just frustrating, Cody. And I just don't know how to put it into words. Even just being a fan of this team, you want them to have success, but they're just so miscombobulated, it feels like.
Yes, it's dysfunctional. The operation, I just feel like you have all these parts and pieces and you're not getting them to work and sync together here. And look, you have you're up against the clock here. There's a sense of urgency to get better. Hopefully you can have a get-right game on Monday Night Football against Jake Browning and the Bengals, who just got mollywopped by the Vikings on the road here.
Can I also say that's the worst thing for the Broncos, the fact that they got absolutely destroyed.
Yeah, it is, because now, the Bengals, they're banged up right now. Dalton Reisner, Noah Fant, those guys are banged up a little bit here. But Jake Browning, I think the Broncos can have success against Jake Browning. I think defensively they'll make that challenge a little more difficult for him specifically. But, you want a get-right game. But then you got to go on the road and play the Philadelphia Eagles, who seemingly they can make all the mistakes possible, right? The Eagles can, and still find ways to win. Like we talk about the margin for error for them. That used to be Kansas City. And now all of a sudden you look at Philly, they made so many boneheaded mistakes in that game. They found themselves down early. They come back and they win. They block 2 field goals, which was crazy to see there. That's going to be a tough test here for the Broncos. And the Jets played tough as well on Sunday, even though that they've kind of had some ups and downs, with where they're at. And then you got to come home and you got to play. I don't think that Russell Wilson is going to be the starter come week 7 for this game. There's already been talks about it this week that he could be benched. So there's that. And then you play the Cowboys. Like the Broncos, this is the toughest part of their schedule here, this stretch that's coming up right now. And I understand like the Joe Burrow effect kind of changed that, like not having him kind of lessens like the strength of this game. I still think that you can't overlook Jake Browning in this Bengals team. They have a lot of playmakers across the board. And they thought that of Daniel Jones too. They're like, oh, Daniel Jones, we want to try to get him to throw the football. What did he do? He sliced and diced him.
Yup, I know. You look at the schedule and you think if this offense can't figure it out, and Quinn Miners told us on Monday, they're going to be very detail-oriented when they're looking ahead to the game on Monday night. So it'll be very interesting, but I'm definitely holding my breath a little bit because I don't know. I don't look at any of these games and think, this is like an absolute win for this Denver Broncos team. Also, now that the Chargers are 3-0, we have to talk about this. Is there any chance that any team can go in there and win the AFC West, or do you think they're just going to get better and they're going to roll right to that title?
The Chargers are playing really good football right now. I think right now they're going to be the favorite to win it. I mean, certainly having the lead is the advantage there. having the head-to-head over Kansas City, over, Las Vegas, and now Denver. I mean, worst case scenario for the Chargers, they lose these next divisional games against Denver, Vegas, and the Chiefs, and at least go 1-1, 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. That would be best case scenario here, but LA is playing really good football. I mean, with how their defense is playing, some of the throws that Herbert is making, he's playing like a true MVP, even though the Broncos did a lot to keep him in check. You would have told me they were going to sack him 5 times and still lose this game, force him to throw the ball 47 times, and say, okay, hey, Denver's going to win this game. They should have done that. But the road for the Broncos to win the AFC West has become much more difficult now. They're going to have to win a couple of games, I feel like, that maybe they're not favored to win on the schedule, and also take care of business in the other games where they may be favored here. It's tough. But then again, as we saw yesterday around the NFL, it was a weird week 3. The Browns beat the Packers, which was really weird because the Packers looked like an early Super Bowl contender through the first couple of weeks. You look at the Rams almost beating the Eagles. You're like, okay, that was a little bit weird. There was just a lot of close games. And we actually thought, I don't know how you felt. I actually felt like, oh, the Giants actually might beat the Chiefs in this game. But then, you lose your kicker, Russell Wilson plays like the Russell Wilson that we've, come to see and know over the last couple of years. Yeah. And that kind of falls out of play. So I don't know, Rachel. It's just the NFL is weird, but that's why we love it.
Okay, so I've asked pretty much everybody this question, and we've never done a podcast during the Russell Wilson era. If you are Russ, do you stop while you're ahead, which probably would have been before he went to the Giants, if I'm being completely honest, because I feel like we all look at Russ as this washed up athlete now. And I like Russ as a person. Like, this has nothing to do with him, everything to do with on the field. But you have to be questioning the Hall of Fame, right? Just a little bit if you look at Russell Wilson's play right now and just how well Pete Carroll disguised him in Seattle.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. A lot of people talk about, if Russ continues to play like this, like you go from Seattle, like if he would have, I don't think we ever thought that Seattle and Russ were ever going to break up, right, initially. If he would have stayed in Seattle for the remainder of his career, I think he would have been an easy Hall of Famer there, right? You can make the question, okay, now he gets traded to Denver. There was a difference of opinion in Russ and Pete Carroll and the differences that they had. The relationship wasn't manageable to keep them intact or paired together for the long term. Yep. But then you see how Russ played in Denver. It's like, ooh. I felt like for an early stretch when he was healthy for the Steelers last year, I was like, okay, maybe Russ has got it. And then in the playoffs, what do we see? Or down the stretch, late in the season there for a playoff stretch there, we saw the old Russ start to go. Now that he's he's in another place now and he's struggling. I do think that Russ will probably be one of those guys. He'll be up for a first ballot, but he won't make it through in his first go. Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. I just think about what I would do in that position. And
tough.
Like, you don't need the money. I know you're doing it because you love the sport, right?
Yeah.
Like, he just loves the game of football. But do you really want to be looked at as like a Joe Flacco who's just, still in the league, but nobody really looks at him as this huge threat? Like, that position would be so hard to have to be in.
Well, and you look at just some of the throws he had on Sunday night, I was just thinking to myself, what are you doing? Like, what's happening there? Like, is there a miscommunication between you and the receiver? Did the receiver run the wrong route? Like,
yep.
I don't understand some of the decision-making there. So it very much week 7, hopefully Dre Greenlaw is making his debut in that game there, but it could very well be against Jameis Winston or Jackson Dart, which would be very interesting.
Well, there's plenty more to get into this week, of course, as we look to Monday night, which we will be breaking down on Thursday. Cody, it is always a pleasure. I'm so glad we get to do this podcast every single week, and we are so glad that all of you get to hang out with us, too. We appreciate you. Please comment down below, how are you feeling about the Broncos in our nice little therapy session after a Sunday loss?
And also make sure you send us your mailbag questions. Rachel and I will answer those as well for you on Thursday. So, as Rachel said, comment your thoughts, your questions, and we'll use them in the mailbag here in a couple days. Broncos country. We'll see you next time.